Welcome back. Today I'm going to dive deeper into something I've talked about before, or at least implied or mentioned many times. And the truth is, you know what's terrifying? And that's the truth that most people have no idea that the voice inside their head is slowly becoming their future. Not someday, right now. And I'm talking about the inner dialogue, the critic, the ego, the sense of identity. There's aspects that's part of you, but it's not actually you. And if you think it's you, it might become a problem. Like every thought repeated, every quiet sentence whispered internally, every unconscious phrase spoken in a moment of fear, it's building identity. You're reinforcing it. And identity creates behavior. Behavior creates patterns, and patterns create destiny. So let me ask you something right out of the gate. What sentence have you been rehearsing so often that your mind has started to believe it's truth? I'm behind. I'm not good enough. I always mess things up. I'll never change. People don't like me, don't succeed. I am too late. I'm not disciplined. I can't trust myself. Listen to me carefully. Your mind is always listening. Always. And the voice it hears the most is yours. And I want to make it clear in a sense, right? That inner critic, that negative conversation, like I said, it's not you. It's an aspect of you designed to protect you from getting hurt. But it does it by keeping you small. And if it can convince you of these things, convince you to repeat this over and over again, because the word is so powerful. The more you speak it, the more powerful it becomes. And that almost sounds fearful in a sense, right? Because I spent much of my life in this war against myself. See, I thought I was in a war that I was doing the right thing because I was agreeing with this inner dialogue, this inner conversation. Mine was you suck, you're a loser. And I would repeat it over and over again. I was literally in a war, but I was fighting on the wrong side because that automatic thing, you don't have power over that. You don't have control of that. That's automatic. What you do have power over, and the whole idea of my podcast is you have power over your inner advocate. And your inner advocate is the positive message that fights the negative message, that disagrees with the negative. You do not have to take what the inner critic says and repeat it over and over again and speak it into existence. Your future is being shaped by the conversations you have with yourself when nobody's around. It's not your social media posts. It's not your motivational quotes. And it's not the version of yourself that you perform publicly. The real direction in your life is hidden in your private repetition, because repetition becomes belief and belief becomes biology. And most people don't realize this. They think thoughts are harmless, but your brain does not know the difference between a fact and something repeated often enough, right? So it means every time you grab onto that thought or hear the inner critic say something and then you repeat it, every time you repeat, I'm a failure, I'm awkward, I'm broken, I'm weak, I'm behind, your nervous system will listen to you. Your identity will listen, and your future is going to listen. And slowly, without realizing it, you start becoming the person you describe. And like I said, much of my youth was spent fighting a battle, but I was on the wrong side. I was agreeing with the negative internal dialogue, the critic. And it was so loud that I couldn't I couldn't even have normal conversations with people because it was so critical. If I said anything awkward or stuff, it's like, it was like, you suck, you loser, you loser. And it got so incredibly powerful that I speak it not just in my mind, but out loud. And I became so awkward around other people. But the only reason this all happened was I did not know that inner voice, that negative internal, I didn't know it wasn't me. I didn't know I could like just argue with it. I didn't know I could disagree with it. I thought because it was there, that was me. I think one of the saddest things in the world is how cruel people become to themselves internally. You know, you are probably so kind to strangers and you're merciless to yourself. People who encourage everyone else, they probably destroy themselves silently. And this happens almost unconsciously. And that's the dangerous part. You don't ever hear it anymore because you're repeating it so often. Imagine if a friend followed you all around all day, repeating every thought you think about yourself aloud. Would you feel empowered or emotionally exhausted? Because people wake up every day under attack. Before the world has a chance to even say a word, their own mind has already started. You're lazy. You'll never figure this out. You're embarrassing. You're too emotional. You're damaged. You always quit. You're not attractive enough. You're fat. You're not smart enough. You're too far behind. And then people wonder why they feel anxious, why they feel emotionally drained, and why they hesitate. And why do they sabotage all the opportunities? It's because confidence is not built publicly first. Confidence is rehearsed privately in your own head. See, you cannot build a powerful life with a voice that constantly tears you down. And that's that inner voice. And here's a deep truth. Your nervous system memorizes repetition. If you repeatedly think fearful thoughts, your body starts adopting fear. If you repeatedly think hopeless thoughts, your body starts preparing for defeat. You know, they even say what you focus on expands. And it's not because all the good stuff isn't happening as same as the bad stuff and all the happy, joyful stuff is happening as same as the fearful stuff. It's like you can only see what you're focusing on. So if your internal life starts focusing all the negatives and how things don't work, your eyes will be searching for that. And this is why people walk into opportunities already defeated internally. Not because they lack talent, but because they rehearse failure so many times that their body expects disappointment. And I know this deeply because I have lived this over and over again. It's like when I was young and I was attracted to or interested in someone, yet, you know, inside, I didn't think there was any chance anybody would ever be interested in me. So I'd be looking for signs of rejection if I ever got far enough down the line to have a conversation, to maybe go on a date. And then even worse than that I so believed that I was so flawed and dangerous and such a mess that when somebody showed real interest in me, my thought wasn't, wow, this is cool. My thought was, what the hell is wrong with this person? Don't they see who I am? Can you imagine that life you're living? There's no way you can have a relationship when you're stuck so deep in this thought process that you're such a mess that there's no way anybody could really, really love you. So you'd settle for ambiguity in relationship, or like almost disdain for being treated unwell. And you know what's heartbreaking? Some people never chased their dreams, and not because they weren't capable, but because the internal dialogue convinced them that they weren't. And eventually they lose the energy to fight back, to keep on going, and they just succumb. Because repetition will become identity. So let's talk about a reframe, a mind shift. Your thoughts are training your identity. Let me give you a perspective shift that could change your life forever. Your thoughts are not just thoughts. They're actually training that internal dialogue. And every repeated sentence is rehearsed. You're conditioning your identity every single day, consciously or unconsciously. And that means if you constantly repeat, I'm anxious, I'm weak, I'm not capable, your brain starts organizing your life around those statements. But here's the beautiful news. The same mechanism that can destroy confidence can also build it. The brain listens to repetition. So if repetition built fear, repetition can build strength. Your identity is not discovered. It's rehearsed. Think about athletes. Before greatness becomes visible externally, it's repeated internally. Champions rehearse beliefs before the results appear. Have you ever seen the video? There's a female sprinter, and you can see she's mouthing words, like she's creating the race. She's creating each step of the way. She's creating success. Have you ever heard of Michael Phelps? If you've ever seen him sitting there at a pool with his hoodie pulled over his eyes and he's got his headphones on, he's visualizing that race. He's visualizing coming off the blocks, powering strong, and coming to the finish and winning. And he visualizes it 1,000 times before he actually swims the race. Because by that time, he's done so much training that his central nervous system just follows the training. You know, champions rehearse belief before results appear. And it's not arrogance, it's belief. They speak positive internally, before the world validates them externally, right? And that doesn't mean they don't have an internal critic. That just means they've developed their internal advocates so powerfully that they create the thought. They create the repetition. You know, because your brain's always asking, what identity are we practicing today? And most people are unknowingly practicing limitation. You know, when I really learned this, it was interesting. Somebody gave me this idea. It was like I had this negative internal critic that was beating on me all the time, and I was choosing to agree with and repeat it over and over again. Somebody said like that internal critic, it's there to protect you, but it protects you by keeping you small. And it says you don't have to agree with it. You don't have to listen to it. You can actually say to it, thank you for sharing. And you can go and do what you have to do anyway. And you can go to another level. You can say, thank you for sharing. That's not true. This is who I am. And this is what I'm creating. And when I learned that was the genesis of my life. That was like taking back power. It's like I stopped the war against myself and started fighting on the proper side. And I want you to hear this carefully. You do not become your potential. You become your pattern. And one of the strongest patterns in your life will always be, and forever, your internal dialogue. So many people wait to feel confident before acting, but confidence comes after repeated internal reinforcement. This is why the words I can learn, I can adapt, I can grow, I can handle hard things matter so much. And for me, I love the hard. The hard things give me the best things. The hard things are the best things because your nervous system hears these positive statements. Your brain hears them, your future hears them, and over time, your identity will start to shift. But there's always a blind spot. So let's go a little deeper because some of the most destructive thoughts don't sound dramatic. They sound normal. That's why they're so dangerous. Something like, I'm probably not good enough. I don't think I have what it takes. I'm just not that kind of person. I always struggle. I'll probably fail. I'll never follow through. And somebody recently says to me, what if I never make it? And these thoughts seem small, but repeated daily, they become architecture. They're building something. They build emotional prisons quietly, and eventually people stopped attempting things that could transform their lives. Not because they lack ability, but because they rehearsed limitation so many times, it starts feeling like truth. A lie repeated internally long enough begins to feel like its identity. And here's what many people don't understand. The brain wants consistency, It wants consistency. It wants to know, like the ego, the idea, the sense of identity, the internal, they all want consistency. They have built you in a box and they don't want you to get outside of that box because you know what? When you get outside of that box, there's a risk of failure. There's a risk of pain. And the whole ego and sense of identity was created through failure in your youth. And saying, never going to let that happen again. So once you've built an identity internally, your behavior starts to protect it, right? Your internal critic. If you believe I always quit, your brain will unconsciously guide you towards quitting just to remain consistent with the identity. That's why transformation feels incredibly uncomfortable. Do you remember that quote I said before? Just before you level up, just before you move to that next level, it gets really hard. And that's because the internal battle trying to keep you in the box. And the worse the battle, the bigger the transformation. That's why I say I love hard. Because growth threatens the old image. Your ego says, no, this isn't who we are. Even if the old identity is painful, even if it's limiting, even if it's destroying your future, because familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar growth. I mean, this is evident in me because for a lot of years, I knew I really wanted to do something big, something that would really help people, something that would have an impact, something more than just taking up space, like displacing a certain amount of air until I died. Yet I had a really tough time in school. It turned out I was dyslexic, but I believed I wasn't smart. I wasn't intelligent. So I would allow myself to be just so successful in work, but never really, really successful. And the thought of going back to school terrified me because money, because I'm not smart enough, because I'll probably fail, because I wasn't good enough. And I took a job that I believed I was going to fail at anyway. And I got to the point where the stress was so much that I ended up in the hospital thinking of having a heart attack. And I realized that I was doing the same thing over and over again. And that if I never took a risk, that I would always be exactly where I was. And I thought about this idea, if you really gave it your all in life, if you gave it everything you got and you failed, you'd still be satisfied with the result. Because dissatisfaction comes when you don't give it your all. It doesn't come from the outcome. It comes from living a life that, what if? What if I had? So I dove into fear and I quit and I moved forward. I want you to imagine something. Imagine there's a child following you everywhere. And every single thing you say internally, they believe completely. Every criticism, every fear, every hopeless sentence. Think about it. And that child's taking it on. Like that's who they are, because that's truth, because you're God. Would you speak differently if you knew this internally? Would you challenge those thoughts and not repeat them? Would you say, thank you for sharing? If the thought was, I'm not good enough, would you repeat that? Or would you go, thank you for sharing. I am good enough. Because that child hears what you're repeating, not what your internal critic is saying. Because the truth is, part of you is listening, like a child, just like that child. Part of you absorbs everything you repeat emotionally. Your subconscious is always recording. And that's why healing matters. That's why awareness matters. And that's why your internal dialogue matters more than you realize. Because you become emotionally shaped by your environment. And that's the environment in your head. Not by that automatic conversation, but when you take it on and you repeat it as if it's truth. So that's an important distinction. I really want you to hear this. Most of us have an internal critic with a negative message, which we cannot control. When it becomes powerful and life-changing is when we do take it on. I'm talking powerful and life-changing in a negative sense. When we take it on, we repeat it and we act like that's truth and we repeat it over and over again. Because you don't have to agree with it. You don't have to. It's not you. It's an aspect of you, but it's not the truth. And you get a say-so. And that's why your internal dialogue matters so much. Because if you hear that say, I'm not good enough, and you say, no, that's not true. I am good enough. I've shown myself over again. I've risen past everything. I can do this. Because eventually you become emotionally shaped by the environment inside your own head. Like I said, not the automatic conversation, but whether or not you agree with it and whether or not you create something that you want. And if some people have spent so long attacking themselves internally that they don't even know what self-respect sounds like anymore. So let me say something. Something to you that may feel uncomfortable. You do not deserve to be emotionally abused by your own mind. And some of you have normalized this for years. And you think self-destruction is humility. You think self-destruction and self-criticism is a motivation. But shame rarely creates sustainable growth. Fear may create temporary movement, but it destroys your peace. You cannot hate yourself into becoming someone you love. Think about that. You can't hate yourself into becoming someone you love. Feel that. Because some of you are trying to build confidence using emotional violence against yourself. And it doesn't work long term. Growth requires honesty. Honesty without compassion creates destruction. So how do we change this? How do we stop rehearsing limitation? Here's a framework. It's the very first step. Catch the sentence. Awareness first. You can't change a pattern you refuse to notice. So ask yourself, what sentence has been running through my life unconsciously? What thought did I repeat today? What identity am I emotionally rehearsing? Actually, write it down. I'm not good enough. What if I never achieve? I'm probably not good enough. Write it down because hidden thoughts have power. Observed thoughts begin to lose power. Step 2, challenge the certainty. The most destructive thoughts internally are spoken like facts. I always fail. I'm not disciplined. I'm broken. Are these things true? I'm not good enough. Are they true? Or are they just repeated emotional conclusions? A thought repeated often becomes an automatic truth. Step 3, replace identity-based language. Instead of I'm bad at this, say I'm learning this. Instead of I always quit, say I'm becoming someone who follows through. Instead of I'm weak, say I am building strength. Notice the difference. The goal is not fake positivity. The goal is constructive identity direction. Step 4, repetition with emotion. One of the most powerful things you can do to change your life is to feel the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Your brain remembers emotional repetition the strongest. So don't whisper your new beliefs. Repeat them consciously, especially when it's the hardest. Especially. Those are the moments identity is being built. Say, and I'm strong. Hey, Willow, I have this. I'm going to keep on going. Nothing is ever going to stop me. Step 5, speak to yourself like someone worth leading. Ask yourself this question. If your inner voice belonged to a coach, would you trust them? Would you feel empowered around them? Or would you feel emotionally unsafe? Because leadership is going to begin inside. What would your coach say, and this, maybe your inner advocate is a coach, hey? What would your inner advocate say when you say, when your inner critic automatically says, I'm not good enough? Maybe your coach would say, you'll never know unless you try. Or you've been working so hard. It's time to build the strength. Keep on going. Take a breath. Seriously, just pause for a second. How many years have you listened to a voice that constantly underestimates you and undermines you? How many opportunities did fear steal quietly? How many dreams were abandoned internally before they were ever attempted externally? But hear me carefully. Awareness changes everything. Because once you hear the pattern, once you interrupt the pattern, you can build identity internally. You're not doomed to remain the person fear convinced you are or you were. Your mind has been listening to you your entire life. So start giving it better instructions. This was the genesis of my new life. When I realized that I can stop that pattern, that I don't have to accept that inner critic, that is not actually who I am, that I get a say so. Your future isn't created once, it's created every single day, moment after moment, sentence by sentence, thought by thought, repetition by repetition. And the voice shaping it the most is your own. So please hear me when I say this. Be careful what you repeat in your own head. Don't worry if there's a negative thought process there. Be careful what you repeat, because eventually your mind stops questioning it and your nervous system adapts to it and your identity organizes around it and your life begins to reflect it. This is why your internal dialogue matters, not because positive thinking magically fixes life, but because identity creates behavior and behavior creates and drives outcome. So if you want a different future, you need to create a different internal environment, not perfection, direction, not pretending, practice, not fake confidence, internal conditioning. The words you repeat privately become the life you live publicly. And maybe today, for the first time in years, you stop agreeing with that internal voice and stop speaking to yourself like an enemy. And maybe today you stop rehearsing defeat. And maybe today you stop building an identity around fear. Maybe today.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Inner Advocate, a podcast by Kimen Petersen, formerly Conversations with Kimen. If you found value in today's episode, please follow, like, and share the podcast with someone who you think may benefit from it. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and connect on Instagram at your_inner_advocate. Until next time, keep listening to and developing your inner advocate.
You begin becoming your own internal advocate, because the person you become tomorrow is shaped by what you're repeating and believing today. So watch the voice, protect, train, because your future's listening. Hey, listen, if this episode really touches you and causes a shift, and you believe you know someone who needs to hear it, because they are walking around right now being destroyed by conversations nobody can hear, remind them they are not powerless, they are not finished, and they are not the thoughts fear taught them to repeat. I'm proud of you for being here. Keep going. Your future is still being written, and maybe now, for the first time, you're finally speaking life into it. You're becoming your own inner advocate.